Ms. Rebecca Simmons, Judge Freeman's voice echoed through the courtroom. I have reviewed the evidence, and what your brother and his wife did goes beyond family betrayal. This court is prepared to deliver its ruling. My heart pounded against my ribs. For weeks I had been made out to be the villain, the ungrateful daughter, the bitter sister. Nathan and Tasha had painted me as unstable, jealous, and selfish, all because I dared to protect our mother's home, the only thing we had left. They'd already sold our family's beach house behind my back, given the entire proceeds, nearly $800,000, to Tasha. She spent it all within months, and when I said no to them moving in with Mom, they humiliated me in front of neighbors, relatives, even at church. I was called heartless by the very people I once cared for. But here in this courtroom, with the truth finally laid bare, I was no longer afraid. The judge turned to Nathan and said, "You knowingly sold a property under shared inheritance without disclosure, forged your sister's signature, and tried to declare your mother mentally unfit to seize her home." A quiet gasp filled the room. Even Nathan looked shaken now. And what came next, no one saw coming. This court hereby rules in favor of Ms. Simmons. Effective immediately, the Simmons Beach Property Trust will be reinstated, and criminal proceedings for elder exploitation will begin against the defendants. Tasha's scream rang through the courtroom like a siren. But me? I stood there, still, quiet, and strong. Finally, watching justice land like the tide crashing against the same shore they tried to steal from me. I remember the day Dad built that beach house. I was 11, Nathan just 8. Dad wasn't rich. He taught high school mathematics, but he was resourceful. He'd saved for years, bought that small plot of land in the Outer Banks when prices were still reasonable, and built most of the house with his own hands and the help of friends. "This is our legacy," he told us, his weathered face crinkling with pride as we stood on the rickety porch that first summer. Not much, maybe, but something real. Something that can't be taken away. The irony of those words would haunt me decades later. Our beach house wasn't grand, just 3 bedrooms, pine floors that collected sand no matter how much you swept, and windows that rattled during storms. But it was ours. Every summer of my childhood was spent there, watching the tides, learning to swim, building memories that felt as solid as the foundation Dad had poured. Mom would make lemonade and read books on the porch while Dad taught us to fish. Nathan and I would race up and down the shore until our legs gave out, then collapse in the sand, laughing. We were close then, before money and marriage and middle age drove wedges between us. "Promise me something, Becca," Dad said the summer before he died. We were sitting on the porch steps, watching the sunset turn the Atlantic golden. Nathan had already moved to Chicago by then, climbing the corporate ladder, rarely making time for family visits. "Anything, Dad. This place," he gestured to the modest house behind us. "It's not just wood and nails. It's us. It's our story. When I'm gone, you and Nathan need to keep it in the family, for your mother, for yourselves, for your kids someday." I took his hand, feeling the calluses that came from years of fixing things around both homes. "I promise, Dad. Always." He died that winter. Heart attack, sudden and merciful in its swiftness. The beach house passed to Mom, with the understanding that Nathan and I would share it eventually. I was 45 now, still teaching at the same public school in Wilmington where I'd started my career. Never married, no children. Not from lack of trying, but life has its own plans sometimes. What I did have was my students, my small apartment close to Mom's place, and the knowledge that I'd kept my promise to Dad by helping Mom maintain the beach house all these years. Nathan's life had taken a different direction. He'd married Tasha 5 years after Dad died, a whirlwind romance that began at a corporate retreat and ended with a lavish wedding I could barely afford to attend on my teacher's salary. Tasha was beautiful, ambitious, and calculated in ways I couldn't articulate at first. She had a business selling luxury skincare products online, barely breaking even, she always complained, though her Instagram told a different story. I still remember the first time they visited the beach house as a couple. Tasha stood in the living room, her designer sandals looking out of place on our worn floorboards, her nose slightly wrinkled. "It's quaint," she said, running a manicured finger along the bookshelf Dad had built. "But the location is incredible. Do you know what properties are going for around here now?" "It's not about the money," I said quickly. "It's about family." Nathan laughed, clapping me on the shoulder. "Always the sentimental one, Becca. But Tasha's right. This place is sitting on gold. Not that we'd ever sell, of course, he added, seeing my expression. Mom was 68 then, still vibrant and independent. She'd divided her time between her main house in Wilmington and the beach house, often spending entire months by the shore during summer. I'd drive out on weekends, bringing groceries, helping with maintenance, simply enjoying her company. Nathan's changed, Mom confided one evening as we sat shelling peas on the porch. Ever since he married her. People change when they get married, I said, trying to be fair. It's normal. Mom shook her head. Not like this. He used to call twice a week. Now I'm lucky if I hear from him on holidays. And when they visit, she paused, searching for words. What, Mom? It feels like they're assessing the place, like it's not a home, but an asset. I dismissed her concerns then. Family was family. After all, Nathan might be distracted by his big city life and ambitious wife, but he'd never betray Dad's wish. Never betray us. 3 years passed. Mom had surgery on her hip, then her knee. I took leave from school to care for her, driving her to physical therapy, making sure she took her medications. Nathan sent flowers once, called twice. He's busy, Mom would say, though I could hear the hurt in her voice. Then came that Tuesday in March, unseasonably warm, windows open to let in the spring breeze. I was grading papers at Mom's kitchen table when the phone rang. Is this Rebecca Simmons? A cheerful voice asked. Yes, speaking. This is Diane from Coastal Reality. I'm just calling to confirm that we have the correct forwarding address for the closing documents on the Simmons property sale. Your brother mentioned you might want separate copies for your records. The room tilted sideways. What property sale? A pause. The beach house on Sea Turtle Lane? The closing was yesterday. Congratulations on the sale. $795,000 is an excellent price in this market. I don't remember what I said next. I don't remember hanging up. I just remember standing in Mom's kitchen, the world collapsing around me and thinking, this can't be happening. But it was. Nathan had sold our beach house, Dad's legacy, our family treasure, without telling me, without asking Mom. When I called him, hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone, his voice was cool, detached. It was the right time to sell, Becca. The market's peaking. How could you? Without even telling us? A slight pause. Mom signed the papers months ago. She gave me power of attorney for the beach property. It's all legal. She would never. Maybe you don't know her as well as you think. Maybe she's tired of that old place eating up her retirement with maintenance costs. I looked across the room at Mom, napping in her recliner, peaceful and unaware that her world had just shifted. I knew then. He was lying. And this was just the beginning of a betrayal I couldn't yet fully comprehend. The next morning, I sat Mom down at the kitchen table, her favorite blue teacup between her hands. At 72, Norma Simmons still had sharp eyes and a sharper mind, despite what Nathan had implied. Mom, I said gently, did you sign any papers for Nathan recently? About the beach house? Her forehead creased. No, why would I? We've always agreed that house stays in the family. My stomach clenched. Nathan sold it, yesterday, for almost $800,000. The teacup slipped from her fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor. Tea splashed across my ankles, but neither of us moved. That's not possible, she whispered. I never signed anything, but it was possible. It had happened. And over the next weeks, the full extent of the betrayal unfolded like a nightmare we couldn't wake from. I called the real estate company, the title company, the lawyers. Everyone had the same story. Mrs. Norma Simmons had signed over power of attorney to her son, who then acted as her legal representative in the sale. When I demanded to see the documents, there it was, Mom's signature. A reasonable facsimile, but subtly wrong in ways only I would notice after years of seeing her handwriting on school permission slips and birthday cards. It's not my signature, Mom insisted, her voice shaking. I would never sell that house. Never. We tried calling Nathan repeatedly. His secretary at the investment firm said he was unavailable. His home phone went to voicemail. Finally, I resorted to email, formal, direct. Nathan, we know the beach house has been sold without Mom's consent or knowledge. Her signature was forged on the power of attorney. This is elder abuse and fraud. We're giving you one chance to explain before we contact authorities. Rebecca. His reply came 3 days later. Becca, always the dramatic one. Mom signed everything willingly. Maybe she forgot which frankly concerns me about her mental state. The money is being managed in a trust for her care. Stop making accusations you can't back up. Nathan. But it wasn't in a trust. We discovered that when Mom tried to access her accounts and found no trace of the beach house proceeds. The money was gone, transferred immediately after the sale to an LLC registered solely in Tasha's name. While this was happening, Tasha's social media exploded with posts. A shopping spree in New York, $15,000 in designer bags. A business retreat to a spa in Miami, $22,000. A complete rebrand of her skincare line. At least $50,000 in new packaging and website design. All while claiming her business was finally taking off after years of struggle. They stole it, Mom said quietly one evening, staring at photos of Tasha posing with shopping bags against Manhattan skylines. They stole your father's legacy. I contacted 3 lawyers before finding one who specialized in elder law and estate fraud. Melissa Jimenez listened to our story in her small office. Family photos and law degrees covering the walls behind her. Unfortunately, this happens more often than you'd think, she said, reviewing the documents we'd gathered. Family members exploiting elderly parents, siblings cutting each other out of inheritances. Can we get the house back? I asked. She sighed. It's already sold to a third party who purchased in good faith. That's difficult to unwind. But the forgery, the financial exploitation, those are both civil and criminal matters. We can file for injunctive relief to freeze any remaining assets and simultaneously report this to Adult Protective Services and the district attorney. Will that get our money back? Some of it, maybe. But given how quickly they've been spending, I wouldn't count on recovering the full amount. Mom reached across the desk, her hand surprisingly steady. I don't care about the money. I care that my son, her voice caught, that my son would do this to us, to his father's memory. We filed the paperwork that afternoon. I felt hollow, exhausted, but also strangely relieved. At least now we were fighting back. The doorbell rang at 7 a.m. the following Sunday. Mom was still in her bathrobe, and I was making coffee in the kitchen. Through the front window, I saw Nathan's black SUV in the driveway. I'll get it, I told Mom, squeezing her shoulder as I passed. Nathan and Tasha stood on the porch, 4 large suitcases stacked beside them. Nathan looked thinner than when I'd last seen him. Dark circles under his eyes. Tasha wore oversized sunglasses despite the cloudy morning, her smile tight and practiced. Surprise! She trilled, stepping forward to air-kiss my cheek. I stepped back. What are you doing here? I asked. Nathan cleared his throat. We've decided to move back to North Carolina, to be closer to Mom during this chapter of her life. Tasha nodded enthusiastically. We thought we'd stay here while we house hunt. Family should stick together, right? The audacity was breathtaking. They'd stolen nearly $800,000, spent it on luxury items, and now expected to move into Mom's house like nothing had happened. No, I said simply. Nathan's smile faltered. What do you mean, no? You're not staying here. Not after what you did. Tasha pushed her sunglasses up onto her head, eyes narrowing. Norma would want us here. You don't speak for her. Actually, I do, I replied, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. Mom has granted me medical and financial power of attorney. Properly. Notarized and filed with the county last week. And she doesn't want you here. That's ridiculous, Nathan snapped. Mom, come tell Becca to stop this nonsense. But when Mom appeared behind me, her face was set with a determination I hadn't seen since Dad's funeral. You sold your father's house, she said quietly. You forged my name. You stole from your own family. And now you want to live. Under my roof? It wasn't like that, Nathan began, but Mom held up her hand. I don't know who you are anymore, she said, her voice breaking. But you're not welcome in my home until you make this right. The look on Nathan's face shifted from shock to cold anger. He grabbed Tasha's arm. Let's go. They'll regret this. As they drove away, Mom collapsed against me, sobbing. I held her, watching. The car disappeared down the street, wondering what form their retaliation would take. I didn't have to wait long to find out. The whispers began the very next day. I was picking up Mom's prescription at Henderson's pharmacy when I noticed Margaret, our church choir director, watching me from the vitamin aisle. When I smiled, she quickly looked away, busying herself with examining calcium supplements. As I approached the counter, I overheard the pharmacist, Mr. Davis, whispering to his assistant. That's her, the one keeping her mother isolated. He stopped abruptly when he saw me, his professional smile snapping into place. Ms. Simmons, your mother's medication is all ready. Thank you, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. And by the way, Mom's not isolated. She'd love visitors any time. Maybe you could tell whoever's concerned. His face flushed red. I didn't mean... I took the medication and left, my heart hammering. In the parking lot, I sat in my car for several minutes, gripping the steering wheel, trying to process what was happening. They were turning people against us. Against me. By Wednesday, the campaign was in full swing. My phone buzzed constantly, with texts from church members and neighbors. Just checking if Norma is okay? Haven't seen her at Bridge Club? Rebecca, is it true you're not letting Nathan visit his own mother? We're concerned about Norma's isolation. As her church family, we want to help. Mom's phone was worse. Messages implying I was controlling her finances, monitoring her calls, even suggestions that I was emotionally manipulating her. It's Tasha, Mom said grimly, showing me a particularly nasty text. This is exactly how she writes, always pretending to care while twisting the knife. Sunday morning brought the confrontation I'd been dreading. Mom insisted on attending church despite my concerns. I've been going to First Baptist for 40 years, she said firmly. I'm not hiding from gossips. We walked into the sanctuary to a sea of stares and whispers. Pastor Williams greeted us warmly enough, but I noticed how his eyes darted nervously between us. We sat in our usual pew, third row from the front, while conversations hushed around us. The service proceeded normally until the prayer requests. That's when Tasha stood, resplendent in a cream-colored dress and pearls that I was certain had been purchased with beach house money. I'd like to request prayers for my mother-in-law, Norma, she said, her voice breaking theatrically, and for my husband, Nathan, who's being denied access to his own mother during her decline. A ripple went through the congregation. Mom stiffened beside me. We're so worried about her isolation, Tasha continued, dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue. Especially given some concerning memory issues and confusion we've noticed. We just want what's best for her. Before I could stop her, Mom was on her feet. I am neither confused nor isolated, she declared, her voice ringing through the sanctuary. What I am is the victim of theft and forgery by my own son and his wife. They sold property without my consent and took the money. Now they're trying to take my home too. The silence was absolute. Pastor Williams stepped forward, clearly desperate to defuse the situation. Perhaps this is a family matter best discussed privately. No, Mom interrupted. They've made it public. They've told lies about my daughter who has done nothing but care for me while they were busy stealing from us. Tasha's face contorted with fury before she quickly composed herself. See how confused she is? How angry? This is exactly what we're worried about. What happened next would replay in my mind for months. Nathan appeared from the back pew, striding down the aisle to stand beside his wife. He looked expensive in his tailored suit, but haggard around the eyes. Mom, he said gently, reaching for her hand. Let us help you. You're not thinking. Clearly, Rebecca has you convinced of things that never happened. Mom yanked her hand away. Don't you dare. Don't you dare stand in God's house and lie to my face. We have the paperwork, Mom. You signed everything. I never signed anything. Her voice rose, cracking with emotion. People were staring now, uncomfortable, embarrassed for us. I saw judgment in some faces, concern in others. Mrs. Peterson, Mom's bridge partner for 20 years, was shaking her head sadly, believing Nathan, not us. See how agitated she gets? Tasha stage whispered to those nearby. This is elder abuse, plain and simple. That word, abuse, hung in the air like poison. I stood, taking Mom's trembling hand. We're leaving. Running away won't solve this, Becca, Nathan called after us as we walked down the aisle. Mom needs professional help, not isolation. In the car, Mom collapsed into tears. How could he? In front of everyone we know. I held her as she sobbed, my own tears falling silently. The church had been her sanctuary, her community. Now it felt toxic, dangerous. We'll get through this, I promised, though I had no idea how. The next morning, a certified letter arrived. Nathan had filed for emergency guardianship of our mother, claiming she was experiencing significant cognitive decline and was being influenced by her daughter to make irrational financial and personal decisions. A court date was set for the following week. He's trying to take me away from you, Mom whispered, the letter shaking in her hands. To put me in a home. To take my house. That's not going to happen, I said, with more confidence than I felt. I called Melissa immediately. This is actually good news, our lawyer said, surprising me. How is my brother trying to declare our mother incompetent? Good news. Because it moves everything into court, where evidence matters more than rumors. They've been fighting a PR battle in your community because they can't win a legal one. The documentation we've been gathering, the forged signatures, the financial transactions, your mother's clean medical evaluations, all of that will work in our favor now. What if the judge believes them? Mom asked, her voice small. That's why we're going to be prepared, Melissa replied. I'm scheduling you for an independent cognitive assessment tomorrow. We'll have sworn statements from your regular doctors, and we'll subpoena the bank records showing exactly where that beach house money went. The next week passed in a blur of legal preparations, medical appointments, and growing isolation. More church members and neighbors distanced themselves, uncertain what to believe. My principal called me in for a concerned chat after receiving calls questioning my character, undoubtedly from Tasha. Only a few loyal friends stood by us. Maria from my teaching team brought dinner one night. I know you, she said simply, and I know this isn't you. The day before the hearing, I found Mom sitting in Dad's old armchair, holding his photograph. He would be so disappointed in Nathan, she said quietly. He'd be proud of you, I answered, kneeling beside her. Standing up for yourself. For what's right? She touched my cheek. For us. I'm standing up for us. When we arrived at the courthouse the next morning, I was stunned to see a small crowd gathered. Church members, neighbors, even some of my students' parents. Had Nathan and Tasha mobilized them against us? But then Maria stepped forward, squeezing my arm. We're here for you, she whispered. One by one, familiar faces nodded, offering quiet words of support. Mrs. Peterson, who I'd thought believed Nathan, pressed a handwritten note into Mom's hand. I know the truth, she whispered. We all do now. As we entered the courtroom, I caught sight of Nathan and Tasha huddled with their attorney, an expensive-looking man with a power tie and cold eyes. Nathan wouldn't meet my gaze, but Tasha stared defiantly, chin lifted. Judge Freeman entered, a stern-looking woman with silver-rimmed glasses and an air of no-nonsense efficiency. As she reviewed the filings before her, I held Mom's hand tightly, praying that truth would prevail. What I didn't know then was that this day would change everything, not just for our family, but for Nathan and Tasha in ways none of us could have imagined. This court will now hear the matter of Simmons versus Simmons, regarding the proposed guardianship of Norma Simmons, Judge Freeman announced, her voice filling the courtroom. Nathan's attorney rose first, smooth and confident. Your Honor, this is a straightforward case of an elderly parent experiencing cognitive decline while being influenced by a codependent adult child. Mrs. Simmons signed over power of attorney to her son. Last year authorized the sale of a family property, then inexplicably claimed no knowledge of these actions. This pattern of confusion, combined with her daughter's unprecedented control over her finances and social contacts, presents clear grounds for intervention. I felt Mom stiffen beside me. The attorney's version of events sounded so reasonable, so concerned. If I didn't know better, I might have believed it myself. Melissa stood next, her simple navy suit a stark contrast to the expensive flash of Nathan's lawyer. Your Honor, this case is indeed straightforward, but not in the way opposing counsel suggests. We have evidence that Mrs. Norma Simmons's signature was forged on power of attorney documents. We have financial records showing that the proceeds from the unauthorized sale of family property, nearly $800,000, were funneled directly into accounts controlled solely by Tasha Simmons, not into any trust for Mrs. Simmons's care. We have 3 separate cognitive evaluations confirming Mrs. Simmons is fully competent. This isn't about protection, it's about property. Judge Freeman's eyebrows rose slightly. Serious allegations, counselor. I'll need to see this. Evidence. Over the next 2 hours, our case unfolded methodically. The forensic handwriting expert testified that the signatures on the power of attorney and property transfer documents were definitive forgeries. Mom's neurologist confirmed her cognitive health was excellent for her age, better than many of my younger patients. The financial investigator traced every dollar from the beach house sale to Tasha's LLC, then to personal purchases, $38,000 for a luxury vacation, $52,000 for jewelry, $165,000 transferred to an offshore account. With each piece of evidence, Nathan seemed to shrink in his chair. Tasha maintained her composure, whispering constantly to their lawyer, who looked increasingly uncomfortable. When it was their turn to present, Nathan's attorney called a geriatric specialist who had met Mom once, for 15 minutes, the previous week. In my professional opinion, he stated, Mrs. Simmons showed signs of potential cognitive impairment, particularly regarding financial decisions. And did you perform standard cognitive assessments? Melissa asked during cross-examination. I conducted an informal evaluation based on our conversation. So, no standardized testing? No MRI? No neuropsychological battery? Those weren't necessary for forming a preliminary opinion. Just to clarify, Melissa continued, you spent 15 minutes with Mrs. Simmons last Wednesday after being hired by her son and determined she was impaired. Meanwhile, her regular neurologist of 5 years, who administered comprehensive testing, found her completely competent. Is that correct? The doctor shifted uncomfortably. Different professionals can reach different conclusions. Next came Nathan's testimony, a carefully constructed narrative about growing concerns for Mom's well-being, her confusion about the beach house sale despite explaining it to her multiple times, and my supposedly controlling behavior. We just want what's best for her, he concluded, his voice catching theatrically. My sister has always been emotionally dependent on our mother. She's never been married, doesn't have her own family. I'm worried she's isolating Mom for her own needs. I felt a flash of white-hot anger at this character assassination. Mom squeezed my hand, grounding me. During cross-examination, Melissa was surgical. Mr. Simmons, in the past 5 years, how many times have you visited your mother? Nathan hesitated. I've been busy with work, but we talk often. That wasn't my question. How many visits? I'm not sure exactly. Phone records indicate you called your mother 17 times in 5 years. Would that sound accurate? He flushed. Possibly. And how many medical appointments have you attended with her? I live out of state. 0 is the answer. Now, about the beach house proceeds. You testified that money went into a trust for your mother's care. Can you provide the trust documentation? Nathan glanced at his lawyer, who subtly shook his head. I may have misspoken. Tasha handled the financial aspects. Tasha's testimony was even more damaging. Poised and articulate, she wove a convincing tale of family concern until Melissa handed her a stack of printed Instagram posts. Mrs. Simmons, this post from April 8th shows you with $12,000 worth of designer purchases. The caption reads, Self-investment is the best investment, boss lady. This was 3 days after the beach house sale closed. Was this self-investment made with proceeds from that sale? My business has been very successful lately, Tasha replied smoothly. Your business tax returns from last year show a net loss of $22,000, Melissa countered. Yet since April, you've documented over $400,000 in personal spending. Where did that money come from? Objection, Nathan's lawyer interjected. Mrs. Simmons' business finances aren't relevant to this guardianship matter. They are entirely relevant when the petitioners claim Mrs. Norma Simmons needs guardianship due to financial mismanagement while simultaneously benefiting from her assets, Judge Freeman ruled. The witness will answer. Tasha's composure cracked. Nathan and I are married. What's his is mine. The beach house was part of his inheritance. Except it wasn't, Melissa said quietly, because his mother never signed it over, and she's still very much alive. The final piece of evidence came when Melissa played an audio recording. Nathan and Tasha's voices filled the courtroom. Once we get guardianship, we can liquidate the house, Nathan was saying. How soon can we list it? Tasha asked. As soon as the judge signs off. Mom won't even know what happened until the locks are changed. What about your sister? What about her? She can't afford to fight us in court. She's a teacher, for God's sake. We'll offer her a small payment to go away quietly. Tasha's face drained of color. Nathan stared at the table, unable to look up. Your Honor, Melissa said into the silence that followed. This recording was made last week, when the petitioners were meeting at Wilmington Coffee House, a public place. My client was alerted to their presence by a friend and sat at the adjacent table. North Carolina is a one-party consent state for recordings, making this evidence completely admissible. Judge Freeman removed her glasses, rubbing the bridge of her nose. When she looked up, her expression was thunderous. In my 20 years on the bench, I have seen many family disputes. I have seen greed disguised as concern. I have seen legitimate worry for aging parents. This case is neither ambiguous nor complex. It is one of the most blatant attempts at financial elder abuse I have encountered. She turned to Nathan and Tasha. You have presented no credible evidence of Mrs. Simmons's incompetence. You have, however, provided this court with substantial evidence of fraud, forgery, financial exploitation, and conspiracy. To us, she said, Ms. Simmons, your mother, is clearly competent to manage her own affairs, with your assistance as needed. This court dismisses the guardianship petition and furthermore grants your counter-petition for a restraining order against Nathan and Tasha Simmons. She wasn't finished. I am also referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation. Court officers will serve Mr. and Mrs. Simmons with papers before they leave today. Tasha made a small, choked sound. Nathan remained frozen, staring into space. Court is adjourned, Judge Freeman declared, bringing down her gavel with finality. As we stood to leave, I felt lightheaded with relief. Mom was safe. The truth had prevailed. The nightmare was over, or at least this part of it was. Outside the courtroom, our small group of supporters surrounded us with hugs and tears. Mrs. Peterson embraced Mom tightly. I'm so sorry I ever doubted you, she whispered. When I saw those bank statements Melissa showed me, the ones proving where the money went, I knew. You came today, Mom said simply. That's what matters. As we walked toward the parking lot, I caught sight of Nathan and Tasha being served papers by court officers. Tasha was crying openly now, mascara streaking down her face. Nathan looked shell-shocked, the reality of what they'd done and the consequences they faced, finally sinking in. For a moment, our eyes met across the courthouse steps. In his face, I saw something I'd never expected: shame. The days following the court hearing unfolded in a strange haze. Relief mingled with exhaustion, vindication with lingering, disbelief. Mom and I returned to her house to find our answering machine filled with messages, some apologetic, others simply checking in, as if the callers had never doubted us at all. Funny how the truth changes people's memories, Mom remarked dryly, deleting message after message. We sat at her kitchen table that evening, picking at a casserole Mrs. Peterson had dropped off, neither of us particularly hungry despite not having eaten all day. What happens now? Mom asked quietly, pushing a piece of chicken around her plate. Legally? Melissa says the DA will review the case. Nathan and Tasha might face criminal charges for the forgery and financial exploitation. At minimum, there will be a civil case to recover whatever's left of the beach house money. Mom set down her fork. I don't mean legally. I mean with Nathan. He's still my son. The raw pain in her voice broke my heart. Despite everything, she was a mother first. Nathan had betrayed her, humiliated her, tried to declare her incompetent, and still, she worried about him. That's up to him, Mom, I said gently. The door isn't closed unless he closes it. She nodded, blinking back tears. And the beach house? Is it really gone forever? The new owners purchased it legally. They didn't know about the fraud. Melissa says we could potentially sue them, but they'd fight it, and it would be messy and expensive with no guarantee of winning. Your father loved that place so much, she whispered. I know, but Dad loved us more, and he'd be proud of how you stood up for yourself. We fell silent, the weight of all we'd lost and all we'd preserved, settling around us. The next morning, a local news van was parked outside our house. Mrs. Simmons, called a young reporter as we tried to leave for a doctor's appointment. Can we get a statement about the elder abuse case against your son? Mom froze, clutching my arm. I stepped in front of her protectively. No comment, I said firmly. Please respect our privacy. But privacy proved elusive. By afternoon, the story had hit the local news. Prominent investment manager accused of defrauding elderly mother. Nathan's company photo appeared on screen as the anchor detailed the allegations of forgery and financial exploitation. My phone rang around dinner time, a Chicago area code I didn't recognize. Hello? Rebecca? A woman's voice, unfamiliar and hesitant. Yes, who's calling? This is Diane Lawson. I worked with Nathan at Meridian Investments. She paused. I'm sorry to bother you, but I thought you should know. Nathan was asked to resign today. The firm doesn't want the publicity. I sank onto the couch. I see. There's more, she continued. Some clients are talking about pressing charges. There are questions about some of their accounts. My stomach dropped. What are you saying? I'm saying this might be bigger than just your family's situation. I've seen some irregularities in his client files for months, Nothing I could prove, but she trailed off. Why are you telling me this? A long pause. Because my mother was victim of elder fraud last year. Her brother took everything, and no one believed her until it was too late. Her voice hardened. People like Nathan and Tasha don't usually stop at one victim. After we hung up, I sat in stunned silence. The possibility that Nathan's betrayal extended beyond our family was almost too much to comprehend. The next 2 weeks brought more revelations. 3 of Nathan's former clients filed complaints with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Tasha's luxury skincare business was investigated for being a potential front for money laundering. Their Chicago home was listed for sale, described by the realtor as a motivated seller opportunity. Through it all, Nathan maintained radio silence with us. No calls, no emails, not even through lawyers. It was as if he'd simply excised us from his life, or perhaps he couldn't face what he'd done. Tasha, however, was less restrained. She created a private Instagram account where she posted tearful videos claiming to be the victim of a vindictive sister-in-law and a confused mother-in-law. She launched a GoFundMe for their legal defense fund, which raised a paltry $340 before being removed for terms of service violations. She just can't stop performing, Mom observed sadly, watching one of, Tasha's videos on my phone. Even now. Are you following her? I asked, surprised. Maria's daughter showed me. Apparently it's all over the local social media. Mom shook her head. They still don't understand that this isn't about money. It's about trust. The criminal investigation proceeded slowly. We gave statements to detectives, handed over documents, answered the same questions, repeatedly. Melissa warned us that prosecutions for elder financial abuse were still relatively rare, despite how common the crime was becoming. But this case has publicity now, she added, and that forged power of attorney is smoking gun evidence. One rainy Tuesday, about a month after the hearing, I returned from school to find a large manila envelope on Mom's porch. No postage, no return. Address, just Norma and Rebecca Simmons, handwritten across the front. I brought it inside cautiously. Mom, did you see this? She emerged from the kitchen, drying her hands on a dish towel. What is it? We opened it together at the dining room table. Inside was a USB drive, a handwritten note, and a cashier's check for $212.67.83. The note read simply, "This is what's left. I'm sorry. The flash drive has evidence that might help your case. T." Mom stared at the check, her hand trembling slightly. It's Tasha's handwriting. Less than a third of what they took, I noted, the bitterness rising in my throat. But why would she return anything at all? We plugged the USB drive into my laptop and found our answer. Dozens of screenshots of text messages between Nathan and Tasha, dating back over a year. Messages explicitly discussing the plan to forge Mom's signature, to sell the beach house, to have Mom declared incompetent so they could seize her primary residence. Tasha's own messages revealed a coldness that was shocking even knowing what we did. We need that money before the firm figures out what he's been doing with client funds. The beach house is our only option. Your mother won't fight back. She's too sweet. Your sister might be a problem, though. Once we sell the primary residence, we'll have enough to disappear. Costa Rica, maybe? No extradition. And most damning of all, a message from Nathan. We need to get the old lady declared incompetent before the SEC investigation goes public. I've got maybe 3 months before they connect the dots. Oh my God, I whispered, reading through the exchanges. He was stealing from his clients, too. They were planning to flee the country. Mom sat very still, her face ashen. Why would Tasha give us this? The answer came the next day, when Melissa called to tell us that Tasha had filed for divorce and entered a cooperation agreement with prosecutors. She's turning state's evidence against Nathan, Melissa explained, in exchange for reduced charges against herself. The money she returned to you will be considered in her sentencing, but the texts she provided are the real bombshell. The DA says they have enough now for multiple felony counts. She's sacrificing him to save herself, I said, not really surprised. That's one way to look at it. Another is that she's finally doing the right thing, even if for self-serving reasons. That evening, as Mom and I sat on her back porch watching the sunset, she asked the question that had been hanging between us for days. Will you ever forgive him? I took a long breath, searching for honesty. I don't know, Mom. What he did, what they did, it wasn't just about money. They tried to destroy your reputation, your independence. They were willing to put you in a facility against your will, to sell your home out from under you. He's still my son, she said softly. Somewhere under all that greed and desperation, he's still the little boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard. I took her hand, feeling its familiar warmth. I know, and I won't stand in the way if you want to reach out to him someday. But for now, I think we need to focus on rebuilding our own lives, on healing. She nodded, squeezing my fingers. The beach house is gone, but we're still here. We're still here, I echoed, watching the sky turn from gold to pink to deepening blue. And that's what matters most. The seasons turned. Summer heat gave way to autumn crispness, then to the mild winter that coastal North Carolina typically enjoys. The criminal. Case against Nathan proceeded through the system with the glacial pace of justice. Tasha's plea deal was finalized. She would serve 18 months in a minimum security facility, followed by 5 years of probation and restitution payments. Nathan, facing more serious charges both from our case and the SEC investigation, remained in legal limbo, out on bail but with travel restrictions, awaiting trial. We heard about these developments from Melissa and occasional news reports, not from Nathan himself. His silence was a wall between us, one that neither Mom nor I knew how to breach, or if we should even try. The beach house money Tasha had returned, that $212,260.83, sat in a separate account, untouched. Mom couldn't bring herself to spend it, calling it tainted. Eventually, we agreed to wafa. Let Melissa explore options for using it more constructively. Life settled into new rhythms. I returned to teaching full-time. Mom rejoined her bridge club and church groups, where most people treated her with a mixture of sympathy and awkward deference. The story had become part of local lore. The teacher and her elderly mother who stood up to fraud and won. I'm not a victim, Mom would say, firmly whenever someone expressed pity. I'm a survivor. December brought unexpected news. The couple who had purchased the beach house, the Hansons, a retired professor and his wife from Vermont, reached out through their lawyer. They've learned about the circumstances of the sale, Melissa explained during a meeting in Mom's living room. They feel terrible about the situation, though legally. They've done nothing wrong. What do they want? I asked cautiously. They're offering to sell the property back to you, at their purchase price, not the inflated current market value. They'd even consider owner financing. Mom and I exchanged stunned looks. We can't afford that, I said. Even with Tasha's restitution, we're nowhere near $795,000. Actually, Melissa said, that's not what they paid. Nathan and Tasha sold it to them for $650,000. The rest went to the real estate company and, I suspect, kickbacks that your brother arranged. The Hansons are offering it at $650,000, with very favorable terms. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Why would they do this? Mr. Hanson said something about karma and doing right. They love the house but feel its history should belong to your family. Of course, there's no obligation to accept. That night, Mom and I sat up late, talking through options. Even at the reduced price, buying back the beach house would require a significant mortgage at a time when Mom should be enjoying retirement, not taking on debt. It was Dad's dream, Mom said, tracing the rim of her teacup. Not just to have the house, but to pass it down through generations. Dad wouldn't want you stressed about money in your 70s, I countered gently. What if we shared it? You could take out the mortgage, I could contribute what I can from my retirement funds, and we'd own it together, the way it always should have been. I hesitated. It's a big commitment, Mom. Life is a big commitment, Rebecca. She reached for my hand. After everything we've been through, don't we deserve to reclaim something that was taken from us? Her determination won me over. By January, we had worked out terms with the Hansons. I would take out a mortgage for $450,000. Mom would contribute $100,000 from her savings, and the remaining $100,000 would be seller financed over 10 years. The closing was scheduled for February 12th, what would have been Dad's 80th birthday. Coincidence that felt like confirmation we were making the right choice. 2 days before the closing, my phone rang with a Chicago area code. My heart stuttered as I answered. Rebecca, it's Nathan. His voice sounded different. Smaller, rougher, without the smooth confidence I'd grown accustomed to. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Are you there? He asked. I'm here, I finally managed. What do you want, Nathan? A long pause. I heard you're buying back the beach house. Of course he'd heard. Even facing criminal charges, Nathan still had connections in the real estate and banking worlds. Yes, no thanks to you. He sighed heavily. I deserve that. I deserve worse. If you're calling for forgiveness, I'm not, he interrupted. I don't have the right to ask for that. Not yet. The yet hung in the air between us. Then why are you calling? I want to help. With the beach house. I laughed bitterly. Haven't you helped enough with the beach house? Please, Becca, just listen. The use of my childhood nickname caught me off guard. I've sold everything. The Chicago condo, the cars, the watches. Tasha took some in the divorce, and legal fees have eaten most of the rest. But I have about $200,000 left. I want you and Mom to have it. For the beach house. I gripped the phone tighter. Why would you do that? His voice cracked slightly. Because it's what Dad would have wanted. Because it's the only thing I can think of that might start to make amends. Because I was wrong. So terribly, horribly wrong. This doesn't erase what you did. I know that. Nothing can. But please, Becca, let me do this one right thing. I closed my eyes, memories flooding back. Nathan teaching me to swim at the beach house when we were kids. Nathan helping Dad replace the porch screens one sweltering summer. Nathan and I watching meteor showers from the roof, making wishes on falling stars. Before Tasha, before greed consumed him, before he lost his way. I need to talk to Mom, I said finally. This isn't just my decision. Of course, he said quickly. Take your time. The money is in an escrow account already. Just let the lawyer know if you want to use it. After we hung up, I sat motionless for several minutes, trying to process what had just happened. Was this a genuine attempt at redemption? A legal maneuver to gain sympathy before his trial? Or something else entirely? I drove to Mom's house, finding her in the garden, pruning roses despite the February chill. Her face changed as I explained Nathan's call and offer. He actually cried? She asked, removing her gardening gloves. His voice broke, I confirmed. I've never heard him like that before. She sat on the garden bench, patting the space beside her. What do you think we should do? I joined her, watching a cardinal flit between bare branches nearby. Part of me wants to reject it outright, to tell him he can't buy his way back into our lives. And the other part? Wonders if this is the first step towards something, not better exactly, but less broken. And practically speaking, his money would reduce our mortgage significantly. Mom looked out over her winter garden. Dormant now, but ready for spring's renewal. When you were both little, you used to fight terribly. Do you remember? But no matter how angry you got, you always found a way back to each other. Usually it started with one of you sharing a toy or a treat. This is a bit bigger than sharing toys, Mom. She smiled sadly. The principle is the same. Reconciliation has to start somewhere. So, you want to accept it? I want to acknowledge it for what it is. An attempt, however inadequate, to make amends. What comes after that, we'll see. The closing proceeded as planned on Dad's birthday. With Nathan's contribution, our mortgage was reduced to $250,000, a much more manageable sum. The Hansons seemed genuinely pleased, sharing stories of their brief time in the house and promising to visit if they were ever back in the area. As we signed the final documents, the real estate agent handed us the keys with a smile. Congratulations. The beach house is back where it belongs. That afternoon, Mom and I drove out to see our reclaimed property. Winter had stripped the surrounding trees bare, and the off-season emptiness of the beach community gave everything a melancholy beauty. The house looked smaller than I remembered, weather-beaten, in need of fresh paint and minor repairs. But when we stepped onto the porch, the familiar creak of the boards beneath our feet felt like a greeting. Inside, the Hansons had changed little. The same pine floors, the same blue-painted kitchen cabinets Dad had installed 30 years ago. Even the marks on the door frame where he'd measured our heights each summer remained untouched. Mom traced the highest mark, Nathan, age 16, with her fingertip. He was so proud that summer, she remembered. He'd finally grown taller than you. I moved to the living room windows that faced the ocean. The February sea was steel gray, white caps dotting its surface under a pale sky. The same eternal rhythm of waves that had soundtracked our childhood. Summers. Do you think we should invite him here? I asked, not turning around. When it's all over, the trial, the sentencing, whatever comes next. Mom came to stand beside me at the window. I think this house has always been a place of healing for our family. It can be again. Even after everything? She slipped her arm through mine. Especially after everything. We stood together, watching. The timeless dance of sea and shore, sensing that we'd come to the end of one chapter and the tentative beginning of another. The beach house was home again, and maybe someday, in ways we couldn't yet imagine, our family might be too. Spring arrived with gentle insistence, bringing new growth to the dunes surrounding the beach house. Each weekend, Mom and I drove out to work on repairs, scraping, and repainting shutters, replacing worn floorboards on the deck, clearing winter debris from the yard. We worked in companionable silence most days, the rhythm of our tasks punctuated only by the constant soundtrack of waves. "Your father would have loved this," Mom said one Saturday in April, as we took a break on the newly restored porch, seeing us bring it back to life together. I nodded, wiping sweat from my forehead with the back of my hand. Remember how he used to say a house is only as strong as the people who love it? He was right about that, and so many other things. The restoration of the beach house became our shared therapy, a tangible way to reclaim not just property, but meaning. Each repaired board and fresh coat of paint felt like an act of defiance against what had been stolen from us. Not just a house, but trust, security, family bonds. Nathan's trial was scheduled for early May. As the date approached, the media interest resurged, with local news running retrospectives on the case. Melissa advised us that we would likely be called to testify, though Tasha's evidence and cooperation had made the prosecution's case extremely strong. "What will happen to him?" Mom asked during one of our consultations. The question had been hovering between us for months. Melissa's expression was sympathetic but realistic. Given the charges, fraud, forgery, elder exploitation, plus the SEC violations, he's looking at a minimum of 5 years. His lawyer will push for a plea deal, but the prosecutor seems determined to make an example of this case. Mom nodded. Silently, her hands folded tightly in her lap. 2 weeks before the trial, I received another call from Nathan. "I'm taking a plea deal," he said without preamble. "I've agreed to 5 years with possibility of parole after 3. I wanted you and Mom to hear it from me, not the news." The clinical way he delivered this life-changing information struck me as very Nathan, always managing the narrative, always one step ahead. When does it start?" I asked, finding myself unable to say the word prison. "I report next Monday. The judge is allowing me a week to get my affairs in order." He paused. "Becca, I need to ask a favor." My guard immediately went up. "What kind of favor?" "Would you and Mom meet with me before I go in? Just once. There are things I need to say in my person." My first instinct was refusal. Despite his financial contribution to the beach house, despite the apparent remorse, the wounds were still raw. But Mom's voice echoed in my mind. Reconciliation has to start somewhere. "I'll ask Mom how she feels about it," I said finally. "I can't promise anything." "That's fair. More than fair." He sounded relieved, even at this tentative opening. "Thank you." When I broached the subject with Mom that evening, she was quiet for a long moment, absently twisting her wedding ring, a habit she'd developed since Dad died. "Where would we meet?" she asked finally. "Neutral ground, I think. Not here, not the beach house." She nodded. "The botanical gardens, perhaps. Your father proposed to me there, did you know that? Under the old oak tree." Shh. Symbolism wasn't lost on me. A place of beginnings might now serve as a place of, if not endings, then transitions. We arranged to meet Nathan on Saturday morning. The gardens were lush with late spring blooms, the air heavy with the scent of jasmine and honeysuckle. Mom and I arrived early, finding a bench near the koi pond where we could see anyone approaching. Nathan appeared precisely at 11, wearing khakis and a blue button-down, dressed like the investment manager he once was, except for the absence of a tie and expensive watch. He looked older, thinner, the confidence in his stride diminished. When he spotted us, his pace faltered momentarily before he continued forward. "Mom, Rebecca." He stopped a few feet away as if uncertain of his welcome. "Thank you for coming." Mom stood first, crossing the distance between them. For a tense moment, they simply looked at each other. Then she opened her arms, and Nathan stepped into her embrace, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I remained seated, watching this reunion with complicated emotions churning inside me. When they separated, Nathan wiped his eyes quickly, embarrassed by the display. "Let's walk," Mom suggested, ever practical. We strolled through the gardens, an awkward trio maintaining careful conversational distance from the reason for our meeting. Nathan asked about Mom's bridge club. Mom inquired after his health. I said little, observing the dance of their cautious reconciliation. Finally, beside a burbling fountain surrounded by ferns, Nathan stopped walking. I've rehearsed what to say. 100 times, he began, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. Apologies, explanations, promises to do better. But none of it seems adequate. Why did you do it? I asked, the question that had haunted me for a year. Was it just about money? He shook his head slowly. It started that way. Tasha and I were in debt, living beyond our means, making bad investments. I borrowed from clients thinking I'd replace it before anyone noticed. Then the market turned, and suddenly I was drowning. But why the beach house? Mom asked. Why not just ask for help? Pride, shame. He looked away. And then Tasha convinced me it was the perfect solution. That you'd never notice, Mom. That you were getting older and wouldn't remember exactly what Dad had wanted for the property. His voice broke. I knew it was wrong. Every step of the way I knew. But I kept telling myself it was just property, just money. It wasn't just property, I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. It was Dad's legacy. It was our family history. And you were willing to destroy Mom's reputation, her autonomy, to cover it up. I know. The simple acknowledgement hung in the air between us. There's no justification. I betrayed everything Dad taught us, everything I once believed about myself. Mom touched his arm gently. What happens now, Nathan? I serve my time. I try to find a way forward. He met her eyes. I won't ask you to visit me. I won't ask for anything more than what you've already given me. This chance to say goodbye, to tell you I'm sorry, and to promise that when I come out, I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of being your son again. He turned to me. And your brother. The sincerity in his voice pierced through my lingering anger. Not dissolving it completely, that would take much longer, but creating a small opening where forgiveness might eventually grow. 5 years is a long time, I said, not unkindly. I know, and I don't expect you to put your lives on hold. I just hope that maybe, someday. He didn't finish the thought. As we prepared to leave, Nathan handed Mom a sealed envelope. Dad's watch. I kept it all these years. It should stay in the family, with someone who honors what he stood for. Mom accepted it with trembling hands. I'll keep it safe for you, for when you come home. The simple statement, acknowledging both his coming absence and the possibility of return, seemed to give Nathan a measure of peace. He hugged Mom one more time, then turned to me, uncertain. I hesitated only briefly before stepping forward to offer a quick, awkward embrace. Take care of yourself in there, I said quietly. I will. He stepped back, composing himself. And you take care of the beach house. Make new memories there. Don't let what I did taint it forever. As we watched him walk away down the garden path, Mom slipped her hand into mine. It's a beginning, she said softly. A small one, I agreed. All beginnings are small, Rebecca. Even the most important ones. The following Monday, Nathan reported to the Federal Correctional Facility in Butner, North Carolina, to begin serving his sentence. The media covered his surrender with brief mentions on the evening news, a footnote to the sensational story they'd followed for months. For us, it marked not an ending, but a transition, into a future still being written, a relationship still being redefined, a family still healing from fractures that had been years in the making. That summer, we opened the beach house again, not as a rental, not as an investment, but as what it had always been meant to be, a gathering place. We invited Mrs. Peterson and her grandchildren for a weekend. Maria from my teaching team came with her family. Even the Hansons visited during a East Coast road trip, seeming genuinely pleased to see how we'd restored the property. One evening in July, as twilight softened the edges of sea and sky, Mom and I sat on the porch, listening to the rhythmic crash of waves. I've been thinking, she said, breaking our comfortable silence, about what to do with the rest of the money. What money? I asked, momentarily confused. The restitution from Tasha, and what's left of Nathan's contribution after the beach house purchase. It's just sitting there, helping no one. I turned to look at her. What did you have in mind? Her expression was thoughtful, determined. A foundation, something to help elderly victims of financial exploitation. So many don't have family to fight for them like I had you. The idea resonated immediately. Dad would have loved that. Yes, she agreed, smiling. He always said wealth was only valuable if it created something good in the world. And so the Simmons Family Trust was born, a small but focused organization providing legal assistance and support to seniors who had been financially victimized. Melissa helped us set it up, even agreeing to serve as legal counsel, taking cases pro bono when the need was greatest. It felt right, transforming the painful chapter of our lives into something that might help others write better endings to their own stories. As for Nathan, we maintained cautious contact through occasional letters and monitored phone calls. The distance, both physical and emotional, gave us all space to process, to grieve what was lost, and to consider what might still be salvaged. "He's teaching math to other inmates," Mom told me one day, after receiving one of his letters. Said it reminds him of Dad. Small steps, tiny bridges being built across a chasm that once seemed unbridgeable. By the following spring, the beach house restoration was complete. We'd preserved what could be saved, renewed what needed refreshing, and added small touches that made it ours again. A new porch swing, shelves filled with books, a wall of family photos, including, after much deliberation, one of Nathan from before, when he was still the brother and son we remembered. Not to pretend it didn't happen, I explained to Mom when I hung it, but to remember there's more to him than his worst decisions. She squeezed my hand in silent understanding. 3 years passed with the steady rhythm of seasons. The beach house became our sanctuary again, a place of healing rather than hurt, of new memories layered carefully over old ones. The Simmons Family Trust grew from a small local initiative into a respected regional resource, partnering with legal aid societies and elder advocacy groups across 3 states. We'd helped over 60 families recover from financial exploitation, providing not just legal assistance but emotional support through a network of survivors. Mom, now 75 but still vibrant, had become the public face of the foundation, speaking at community centers and retirement homes about recognizing and preventing elder fraud. "You found your calling," I told her one evening, after watching her captivate an audience of seniors with her story. "Sometimes our worst experiences give us our greatest purpose," she replied. "I just wish it hadn't cost us so much to find it." Nathan's parole hearing was scheduled for late August, 3 years into his 5-year sentence, as his lawyer had predicted. Mom and I had been notified as victims, given the opportunity to submit statements or appear in person. "Will you go?" I asked Mom over dinner at the beach house, the question I'd been avoiding for weeks. She set down her fork deliberately. "I've thought about it a lot, and yes, I want to be there. To support his parole, to speak my truth, which includes both the harm he caused and the steps he's taken toward amends." She looked at me steadily. "Will you come with me?" I hesitated. My relationship with Nathan remained complicated. We'd exchanged occasional letters, stilted at first, gradually becoming more open. He'd followed the development of the trust through news clippings Mom sent him, even offering suggestions based on what he was learning about financial crimes from fellow inmates. But seeing him in person, in a prison setting, speaking about whether he deserved early release, that felt different. "I need to think about it," I said finally. That night, unable to sleep, I walked down to the shoreline. The moon cast a silver path across the water, the same view that had comforted generations of our family. I thought about Dad, about promises kept and broken, about the strange, winding path that had led us here. Nathan had betrayed us in the worst way, had nearly destroyed Mom's reputation, her security, her home, had sacrificed family bonds for financial gain, and yet, he'd admitted his guilt, had given back what he could, had accepted his punishment without the legal fights his wealth once could have funded. His letters showed reflection, remorse, a man genuinely reckoning with the person he had become and the person he wanted to be. Was that enough for forgiveness? For a second chance? The waves offered no clear answer, just the eternal rhythm of retreat and return, destruction and renewal. By morning, I knew what I needed to do. The parole hearing was held in a sterile conference room at the Butner facility. Mom and I sat side by side, hands clasped tightly as various officials presented reports on Nathan's behavior, his participation in rehabilitation programs, his low risk of reoffending. When Nathan entered, I barely recognized him. Prison had aged him beyond his 50 years, his hair now more gray than brown, his once confident posture humbled. He wore a clean but standard-issue uniform, no trace of the designer clothes that had once been his armor. His eyes found us immediately, widening in surprise at my presence beside Mom. A small, uncertain smile flickered across his face before he composed himself. Taking his seat at the table, the parole board asked standard questions about his offense, his time served, his plans if released. Nathan answered clearly without excuses or deflection, a stark contrast to the brother who had once twisted truth like an artist. I committed serious crimes, he stated plainly. I betrayed my family, my clients, and myself. I've used my time here to understand why. The rationalizations, the entitlement, the fear of failure that drove me. I can't undo what I did, but I can commit to never repeating those patterns. When asked about his post-release plans, he outlined a modest proposal: a small apartment near Durham, a job offer from a former colleague's nonprofit focusing on financial literacy for low-income communities, regular meetings with his parole officer, and continued therapy. I don't expect to return to finance, he said. That chapter of my life is closed, but I can use what I know to help others avoid predatory situations. Then it was our turn to speak. Mom went first, her voice steady and clear. My son committed terrible acts against me and his sister. He broke trust in ways that can never be fully repaired, but he is still my son, and I believe in the possibility of redemption. I've seen genuine remorse in his letters, his actions, his willingness to accept responsibility. If the board grants parole, I would welcome the opportunity to continue rebuilding our relationship with appropriate boundaries and expectations. The chairman turned to me. Ms. Simmons, would you like to address the board? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Not just for Nathan, but for all of us. My brother's actions devastated our family. He attempted to steal not just property and money, but our mother's dignity and autonomy. For a long time, I couldn't imagine ever trusting him again. I paused, gathering my thoughts. But these past 3 years, I've seen consistent evidence of someone working to understand their failings and make amends where possible. The Nathan sitting here today is not the same person who committed those crimes. I met my brother's eyes, directly for the first time. I support his parole, not because what he did wasn't serious, but because keeping him incarcerated longer serves no further purpose. His greatest contribution now would be using his experience to prevent others from following similar paths, both as victims and perpetrators. Nathan's eyes filled with tears, though he remained composed, nodding slightly in acknowledgement of my words. 6 weeks later, we received the notification: parole granted, with strict conditions including restitution payments, community service, and prohibition from financial management roles. Nathan was released on a crisp October morning. By prior agreement, Mom and I didn't meet him at the prison gates. That moment felt too charged, too performative for the careful reconstruction we were attempting. Instead, we arranged to meet the following weekend at a small cafe in Durham, near the halfway house where he would initially reside. He arrived early, waiting at an outdoor table, a paper cup of coffee cooling before him. He stood when he saw us approaching, uncertainty in every line of his body. "Thank you," he said simply when we joined him. "For coming. For what you said at the hearing. For everything." The conversation that followed was awkward at times, halting, marked by the careful navigation of people finding new ways to relate after profound breach and tentative reconciliation. We avoided difficult subjects, focusing instead on Nathan's immediate plans, Mom's garden, my teaching. As we prepared to leave, Nathan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn book. "I found this in the prison library. It helped me understand things differently." He handed it to me, a collection of essays on forgiveness and reconciliation. There's a quote in there that made me think of us, about how forgiveness isn't forgetting or excusing, but choosing to see the humanity in someone who's caused harm, about how it frees the forgiver as much as the forgiven. I accepted the book, touched by the gesture. It's a process, Nathan, for all of us. I know, and I'm grateful for whatever part of that process you're willing to share with me. That winter, the Simmons Family Trust launched a new initiative, preventative education programs about financial exploitation, designed for both potential victims and those who might be tempted to exploit others. Nathan contributed to the curriculum, drawing on his insider knowledge of how such schemes operated. He didn't work directly with the trust. That boundary remained important. But his input proved valuable, bringing authenticity to the materials that might otherwise have been missing. By spring, he had moved into his own apartment and started his job with the financial literacy nonprofit. We established a careful routine: monthly dinners, occasional phone calls, a measured rebuilding of family connections, without ignoring the history that had altered them forever. On the anniversary of Dad's birthday, Nathan asked if he could visit the beach house. After discussing it privately, Mom and I agreed. The day dawned clear and cool, the February ocean steel gray under a bright sky. I met Nathan in the driveway, watching as he took in the restored exterior, the fresh paint, the new landscaping. "It looks good," he said quietly. "Better than before, even." "We've taken care of it," I replied, leading him inside. He moved through the rooms, slowly, touching familiar objects, noting changes, stopping before the wall of family photos. His finger traced the edge of a frame, containing a picture of all of us, Mom, Dad, Nathan, and me, from the summer he turned 16. His last growth spurt had put him 2 inches taller than me, a fact he'd celebrated by ruffling my hair at every opportunity. "You kept this," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Family history is complicated," I answered, "but it's still ours." We walked down to the beach, the wind whipping our jackets, carrying the salt spray. Standing at the water's edge, Nathan turned to me. "Do you think Dad would have forgiven me?" he asked, the question clearly one that had haunted him. I considered it honestly. Dad believed that people could change if they truly wanted to. He also believed in consequences. So yes, I think he would have forgiven you, after you'd done the work to earn it. Nathan nodded, blinking back tears. "I'm still doing that work. I always will be." "I know." We stood in silence, watching the eternal rhythm of waves against shore, advancing, retreating, reshaping the sand grain by grain. Nature's lesson in how change happens, not all at once, but persistently over time, with forces both gentle and powerful. That evening, the 3 of us sat on the porch, bundled, against the chill, watching the stars emerge. Mom had made her famous clam chowder, and we ate from bowls balanced on our laps, the conversation easier than it had been in years. "I've been thinking," Mom said during a lull, "about the trust's future. I'm not getting any younger, and the work is important." "You've built something remarkable," Nathan said. "Something that matters." She smiled at him. "We all have, and I think there's a place for you there, Nathan. Not handling money," she added quickly, "but teaching, sharing your story, helping others recognize the warning signs from both sides." The offer hung in the air, not just a job opportunity, but a pathway to fuller redemption, to transforming his worst mistakes into something valuable for others. "I'd be honored," he said, finally, "if Rebecca agrees." All eyes turned to me, the final arbiter of trust in our fractured, healing family. I thought of Dad's words from so long ago, standing on this very porch. "This is our legacy. Not much, maybe, but something real." Our legacy now wasn't just the house, but what we'd built from the ashes of betrayal. The trust, the healing, the difficult, imperfect path of forgiveness. "We start small," I said. "Guest speaking first. See how it goes." Nathan nodded, acceptance and gratitude in his eyes. "That's more than fair." Later, as the moon rose over the Atlantic, casting its silver path across the water, I found myself alone on the beach. The house behind me glowed with warm light, the silhouettes of Mom and Nathan visible through the windows as they washed dishes side by side. Our family would never be what it once was. The betrayal had changed us all, had redrawn the boundaries of trust and relationship in ways that couldn't be undone. But something new was emerging from those altered boundaries, something perhaps stronger for having been broken and deliberately, mindfully rebuilt. I thought of the Japanese art of kintsugi, repairing broken pottery with gold, creating something more beautiful for having been damaged. Our family's fractures would always be visible, but perhaps they too could be filled with something valuable. Hard-won wisdom, authentic reconciliation, the courage to begin again. The ocean before me continued its ancient rhythm, advancing, retreating, constantly reshaping the shore. Nothing stayed the same. Everything evolved, even pain, even betrayal, even love. And in that moment, standing between sea and shore, past and future, what was lost and what might yet be found, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. Not the peace of forgetting, but the deeper peace of understanding that some journeys have no neat endings, only new chapters waiting to be written. Sometimes the hardest people to stand up to are the ones who share your blood, I whispered to the waves. But when family becomes the threat, silence becomes surrender. And I chose to fight. I had fought. For Mom, for Dad's legacy, for justice. But now I was choosing something else. The complex, imperfect work of rebuilding. Not because Nathan deserved it, but because we all deserve the chance to be more than our worst mistakes or deepest hurts. I turned back toward the house, toward the warm light and the family within, changed, scarred, but still, somehow, ours.